creating a system that ensures livability for all of Muskegon County residents. That's big. That's audacious. Just think about it. That's the vision of the Livability Lab, creating a system that ensures livability. Not a program, not a task force or a coalition, but a system. We're going to address that system. Welcome to Muskegon County, everyone. I'm Mickey Wallace, and I'm going to share with you the story of Livability Lab, how it came to be, where we are, and where we might be headed. But before we can talk about the lab, we have to first talk a little bit about our beautiful, beautiful area of Muskegon County. You see, if we understand the history, the people, the mindset, it might help to see how all of this comes together. Insert a little fast-paced history segment here. The name Muskegon is derived from an indigenous name meaning marshy river or swamp. The natural resources of Muskegon County are vast, with deep inland lakes adjacent to Lake Michigan, coastal dunes, rich soil for farming, and dense forested land. Nomadic Paleo-Indian hunters passed through the area thousands of years ago. Then came the Hopewellians, and more recently, bands of Ottawa and Potawatomi tribes. French explorers were here in the 17th century, and settlement began around 1837. In 1859, Muskegon County was formed. East Coast businessmen from a variety of backgrounds came seeking their fortunes, joined by immigrants from Canada and Northern Europe. The turn of the century and industrialization brought Southern Europeans, and the war years produced the Great Migration, with large numbers of Southern African Americans moving northward, joined by Mexican Americans and Appalachian peoples, adding to the mixture. The result is a rich, diverse culture through this influx of forward-thinking entrepreneurs, investors, and working-class folks looking for better opportunities for themselves and their families. This imagination for potential has endured in a place that at any given time in history ranges from once having more millionaires per capita than anywhere else in the U.S. to an important manufacturing and shipping center on the Great Lakes. From struggling with post-industrial transitions common in the Midwest to many phases in between, including the recent trajectory of growth and investment. There's always reason to celebrate and always room for improvement. Maybe that's exactly why Muskegon remains confident yet humble about its unique culture and perspective. Existing through time, carried forward by generations, it seems a deep appreciation for a better quality of life permeated the community and became embedded in the DNA, remaining through the years of boom and bust and rebirth. Muskegon County is known for its entrepreneurial grit, commitment to community investment, and down-to-earth, blue-collar roots. The determination helped create a genuine combination of unpretentious sophistication that likely fuels our ongoing spirit of pushing boundaries from deep within. So you can see, here in Muskegon County, we've proven that we have the perseverance, the know-how, the work ethic, the diversity, the resources, the heart, and the audacity to adapt and achieve. Now, we've talked about Muskegon County. Let's bring this thing around and take a look at how the Livability Lab came to be. Now, we do have a little background history on this one too, so roll it. The state of Michigan received a multi-year federal grant to implement innovative healthcare system enhancements that benefit families and improve the health of communities. Muskegon County is one of 5 regions that were selected to participate. This includes the development of the Community Health Innovation Region, or the CHIR. The other regions are Genesee County, Jackson County, Livingston, Washtenaw counties, and a 10-county cluster in northern Michigan. The Muskegon CHIR is a broad partnership coming together to identify and implement strategies that address community health and well-being as prioritized by the community. Mercy Health is serving as the backbone organization, or BBO. Active members are from across all sectors, including education, businesses, government, healthcare, and community services and support. As an example of one of the more recent activities, the CHIR implemented enhanced processes and procedures to improve the clinical community linkages system in Muskegon County, streamlining the referral and follow-up processes. CCLs hope to connect healthcare providers, community organizations, and public health agencies so they can improve patients' access to preventative and chronic care services. Part of the work of the CHIR includes a collective impact model, which simply says that all aspects of a community have a role in its health and well-being. Developed by Drs. Penny Foster Fishman and Aaron Watson at Michigan State University, the Able Change framework is a dynamic model of change that is adaptive to local conditions. It has 6 guiding principles or simple rules. 1. Engage diverse perspectives. 2. Think systemically. 3. Incubate change. 4. Implement change effectively. 5. Adapt quickly. 6. Pursue social justice. A series of workshops were held. Eventually, a decision was made to create a focus area to engage more deeply within the community. The steering council decided on a census tract in the south side of the city of Muskegon Heights. The Shire brought on board a consultant and resident of the area, Marquise Childers Jr., and partnered with the local grassroots nonprofit organization, the Coalition for Community Development, for additional support with the engagement efforts. This area was called the Resilience Zone. The engagement efforts included surveys, community meetings, and a photo voice initiative. The photo voice process, part documentary, part art, part storytelling, provides a way to hear residents' unmediated point of view and to learn from their expertise. The pictures and stories provide residents a way to reflect on their own lives and to talk together for several weeks about what they want to preserve and celebrate and what they want to address and make better. After this period of critical analysis, the group chooses their images, writes their narrative, and presents a public exhibition of their work. Ultimately, it's a catalyst for conversation and a process to communicate knowledge and concerns from the grassroots to the organizations, government officials, and others that form public policy and make decisions that affect the community's well-being. A beautiful thing happened once the South Heights Photo Voice exhibition was unveiled and the conversations began. The insight was deeply informative, with nuanced reasons for areas of strength and areas of concern. Coming through most strongly, though, connection with neighbors and pride of place. The residents love their community and wouldn't want to live anywhere else. They're looking to make sure that the future of their city grows in a positive way. The zone work and the South Heights Photo Voice Initiative was a real turning point in the trajectory of the Shire and probably was the biggest catalyst to develop the 100-Day Challenge, which came to be known as the Livability Lab. So let's pick it up from there. Why and how did the idea for the 100-Day Challenge come about? How did that process begin? Well, the idea with the Resilience Zone work, including Photo Voice, was to more deeply engage residents, for residents to reflect and think critically about lived experience and bring that valuable knowledge to the decision-making processes. The residents responded, putting the work in to develop and document the information, ready to thoughtfully engage, but that was only one side of the conversation. The other side consists of the organizations and agencies within the system. They also were asked to reflect on their standard policies and practices and come to the table for a new kind of conversation, melding lived experience with industry experience, and there just wasn't that same level of engagement happening there yet. The question was, how to motivate and inspire all parties to come to the table, to hear each other out and consider doing things differently, and to be open to innovation. And not only the organizations and agencies, but residents from all across Muskegon County. That's when our colleague at MSU, Dr. Penny Foster Fishman, suggested a 100-Day Challenge. These have been successfully implemented around the country to inspire action towards a common vision. The idea is to create the kinds of systemic changes needed in communities, and she thought it might work here. A 100-Day Challenge focuses on achieving an ambitious and concrete result within 100 days. The MSU Able Change model offers a step-by-step guide. The Shire Steering Council approved this tactic and a design team was formed to develop and implement the challenge. This group originally included the Shire Director, Mary McDonald. Vondi Woodbury focused on managing the progress of this new design team and integrating elements of Able Change. Marquise Childers Jr. with the vital link to the Resilience Zone work, Kerri VanderHoff, who expanded her role to include communications and messaging for the 100-Day Challenge, Michael Ramsey, the connection to the community clinical linkages and the backbone organization component of the Shire, Kim Wood, logistics and assistance with database management, Catherine Weeses with administrative support, and Logan Jensen joined the team as the 100-Day Challenge developed. Additional support came from Tess Kittredge, Alicia Cox, and Charisma Kitchen. This design team worked closely with our colleagues from MSU and Able Change, Dr. Penny Foster Fishman and Dr. Aaron Watson, along with support from additional individuals from MSU, including Jennifer Nottingham, Abby Wattenberg, and a team of graduate students to help gather, compile, and interpret data. All right, Well, I hope you got all of that, because first things first, that common vision for the challenge needed to be identified. And one of the first things we learned while working through those drafts of a vision and sending it back and forth for more community feedback was language really matters. Because of the Shire's roots in the health and human service sector, concepts like social determinants of health, or sometimes called influencers of health, weren't all that familiar to people from other sectors. Or the word equity. The nuanced definition of that word means something a little different to different sectors. Once the terms and concepts were defined a little clearer, when people outside of the industry understood better that the social determinants are just different aspects of our lives, things like where we live, work, educational opportunities, social connections, etc., and how those have an impact, positive or negative, on our overall health and well-being, we could get on the same page as a community and find that common vision. Now, previous challenges around the country normally had a specific focus in just one area, such as improving high school graduation rates. But as the survey information and feedback kept revealing, the people of Muskegon County were not just going to settle for one goal. Understanding that things are interconnected, the residents knew that to really improve things here, it's necessary to think big. And we can't be afraid to think big now, can we? Especially if we want to really bring about change. So, business, education, neighborhoods, health, and more are all needed to be included in this effort. This was about true, large-scale, systemic change. Because if we're going to do this, let's do this. Before really putting together all the pieces, we had to figure out the branding. It had to be more than just a 100-day challenge. While the academic world may be aware of this model for community change, it just wasn't clear enough to a general audience what we were applying it to here. And we needed that to attract the cross-sector participation if this was going to work. Right about then, we came across a magazine extolling the virtues of Muskegon County, enticing people to move here, businesses to invest here, and tourists to vacation here. It talked about the livability of the area that helped make Muskegon so attractive. The light bulb was on. That's it. All these social determinants of health, these areas of economic and educational opportunity, of well-being, of social and entertainment options in friendly neighborhoods, it's what people just generally call livability. And to improve equity, to identify and remove interconnected systemic barriers that exist, is to improve livability, which affects the entire community in a positive way. And the 100-day challenge is about innovation, a defined temporal space that allows for different perspectives to help shape the action plans, taking on root cause analysis, barriers, and strategies to mitigate or remove them. Sort of like what laboratories are for, a place to experiment and try new things, a place that encourages documented risk-taking. So, as the vision emerged from community feedback, the unique branding of our 100-day challenge was born, Livability Lab, creating a system that ensures livability for all Muskegon County residents. Now, this cross-sector, interconnected target is a groundbreaking approach. Now, it did raise a little concern at first with our MSU colleagues that we were reaching for such a broad vision. That's a lot of moving parts to pull together, after all. That's a lot of information for our communities to take in and stay on track. But remember this one thing. We're talking to Muskegon County here. We know how to roll up our sleeves. We know how to push past the boundaries, and we don't always need a blueprint from somewhere else to keep things moving. We're used to making new things. We're used to reinventing ourselves. So we push to keep the vision. The design team, along with our colleagues at MSU, pulled together the data to provide the community with information needed to launch the challenge. The Shire Director, Mary McDonald, reached out to cross-sector leaders within the community and formed a core team that met once a month to provide feedback and advice during this planning stage. This core team also mobilized endorsement from Muskegon County businesses, government, neighborhoods, and numerous health, education, and human service organizations. Our cross-sector, interconnected approach meant our framework for the data needed to allow for those overlaps. We tried several established linear and vertical graphs, but ultimately realized we needed to create a circular, layered design. The Livability Lab framework is a useful tool that helps us to do the work needed. It looks simple, but it's loaded with information. The online version is interactive. Each section is clickable and leads to data compiled from hundreds of community surveys, focus groups, and local and national reports. The vision is in the center. And the 5 livability elements surrounding it are areas that the community listed as necessary for a healthy and thriving life. Click on those and you will see the definition and status of each. The orange community conditions help us take action. These are things that need to be addressed to improve livability and reach our vision. You can find this interactive framework at livabilitylab.com. While the framework helps identify root causes that affect community conditions, it's the lab's 100-day challenge process that helps take action on that information. The process to work through these conditions is based on the Able Change model by Dr. Penny Foster Fishman and Dr. Aaron Watson. It includes action steps of define, design, do, and learn. You can find out more about this process on the website as well. In planning for launch day, our design team held strong to the belief in keeping the tone and the message aspirational and uplifting. You see, we love our community and we have great strengths to leverage. We're also not afraid to call out those things that need to be fixed. There's plenty to be aspirational about. Muskegon County has recently seen growth and investment, and we have a real opportunity to make sure all move forward together. Planning also included the recruitment of several individuals to become coaches. This was to create the structure necessary to support the challenge teams and guide them through the process. These coaches were trained with the help of our partners at Michigan State University. On the morning of September 10th, during a continental breakfast, jazz music opened the event at the Folkert Community Center. It served as a metaphor. Jazz is an improvisational form that depends on different instruments working together, trusting the knowledge and talent each musician brings, just as our cross-sector, resident-driven approach would have to trust each other to do. Over 300 were in attendance, and the prior outreach, engagement initiatives, and collaboration helped bring a diverse mix of minds. Members of the core team welcomed the crowd, and guest speakers shared perspectives that provided insight into different lived experiences across our community. Seating arrangements ensured that each table had a good cross-sector mix as well, as there were activities planned for later in the morning where the MSU team would hand out data packets that allowed each table to review and work through root cause analysis together. By lunchtime, the energy in the room was high. The motivation to take on the data encountered was strong, and an impressive 19 challenge teams were formed. These teams were proposed by attendees who were inspired and ready to volunteer their time to work toward the community vision. The work needed was based on the community data provided. Once the proposed teams were announced, other attendees joined those that interested them the most. We were ready to move to the next step. The 100-day celebration was held on January 23, 2020, and there was much to be celebrated. We heard shout-outs from every team on their greatest accomplishment. Several teams took to the stage to present their wins, whether they fell into the define, design, do, or learn stage, and panel discussions helped share what was learned through the cross-sector teamwork. For the remainder of the event, attendees could mingle among the expo-style setup that allowed each team to highlight their accomplishments and talk about where to take things next. You can learn more about the 19 teams by visiting livabilitylab.com, where you can download the report booklet. Public sector consultants also made a short documentary about the challenge, visiting Muskegon during the 100 days to check in with teams and including footage and interviews from the celebration. The link to that video can be found at the Livability Lab website. I encourage you to take a look and relive the magic. Announced at the celebration was Livability Lab 2.0, where renewed support from the state of Michigan would help take the next steps with the teams. Michael Ramsey moved into the role of CHIR Director and solidified the merging of the Resilience Zone, community clinical linkages, and challenge work under the Muskegon CHIR Livability Lab umbrella. The work continued as the teams began to coalesce into the 5 livability element groups to create a cohort with support from key organizations known as community conveners. The design team conducted a post-event survey and executive summary report to document and learn from the 100-day challenge experience. We learned that the framework and process was understood and embraced by the community, that the focus on inviting a cross-section to the table was noticed and appreciated, and that the community thought it was worth doing again. As the design team was often problem-solving and navigating uncharted territory along the way, we could now look back and reflect on how we arrived where we did. How did we play a part in this transformative experience? Mary McDonald polled the team for feedback, and in the responses noticed a resemblance to Lewin's force field analysis models. The components are the leadership of the CHIR Steering Council and core team. The framework includes the vision, livability elements, and community conditions, as well as the process for creating it and vetting it, the partnerships with MSU and MDHHS, and the design team. Force field analysis is the idea that the status quo is maintained by an equilibrium between forces that drive change and others that resist change. Innovation and persistence in building consensus for driving forces and mitigating those restraining forces is necessary to reach a desired goal. In other words, as pertains to the Livability Lab, in all components that create the forces holding the system in place, there are both the driving forces and restraining forces within them. There are many reasons for being on either side of change. Driving forces may desire pushing towards a vision or goal, and sometimes a restraining force is in place because miscommunication or bureaucracy, or maybe more studies need to happen before people and institutions are convinced it's beneficial to change. In any event, for there to be a transformation to a new desired state, the balance of the driving forces needs to shift. That means mitigating and lessening the resisting forces while building support and consensus of the driving forces, enough to move the status quo. As you can imagine, this takes persistence, negotiation skills, creative thinking, and passion. The design team embodied all of those. With all the feedback, the lessons learned, and the momentum toward continuing the work, we were well on our way and ready to apply it all to Livability Lab 2.0. And then COVID hit. Health concerns were a top priority. The schools were closed, businesses closed, many jobs were lost. And the design team, as with so many other organizations, took a pause and pivoted to address a global crisis. Understanding that the cross-sector communications network created during Livability Lab could be useful here, together with the information flow from the CCL that could identify those community resources and relief help, the team began disseminating vital information. At the same time, the needs of the community were quickly changing. And as champions for the resident voice in the decision-making process, the team began surveying the community and sharing the new data with our cross-sector partners so the relevant needs could be met. Then tragedy struck again when the murder of George Floyd happened. Our world was rocked immediately and forcibly. Systemic racism was now widely acknowledged as a public health threat. The disparities impacting the African American community are profound, and this needs to be called out for what it is. So as the days and the weeks passed, the residents of Muskegon County organized and rallied and pushed through to difficult times to care for our loved ones, to support our community, and to speak for a better way forward for our oncoming generation. By the early summer, we checked back in on those challenge teams, how they were doing. Was their work still needed to be done here? Were they wanting to continue in some way? And for many, that answer was yes. It would look a little different, right? It would need new data to reflect the changes in our communities. But the Muskegon County grit was definitely coming through. We needed to get back to work, now more than ever. Coaches and community conveners were brought back in. The 19 merged teams were in their relevant livability element groups, and the launch day for a 45-day challenge was set. We needed to take that first step, to get back to action and to build a bridge to recovery. And due to COVID, we need to do much of it virtually. On August 11, 2020, Livability Lab 2.0 launched, and we had over 85 attendees in the virtual session. We heard from members of the core leadership team as they reflected on Livability Lab past, present, and future. We heard from special guest speakers about how COVID and racial inequity impact the community. We reviewed the new data collected from the community surveys and adopted a new process, the 5 R's, that help incorporate these community conditions into the previous framework and process as we do the work. Relief, recovery, retool, reform, reflect. Breakout sessions gave the merged teams a chance to discuss common goals and develop action steps to reach one significant step forward by the 45-day mark. Livability Lab 2.0 45-Day Challenge Celebration Day, September 29, 2020. We bring the 45-day challenge to a close and celebrate the wins reported by the 5 livability element groups: education, health, safety and security, economic opportunity, social connection and trust. Their reports are posted at livabilitylab.com. Be sure to read through them for all of the details. Folks, It has been my absolute pleasure to serve as your Livability Lab host since the very beginning. Continuing greatness, let's do great work.